The way you're gonna perform the best is when you enter to that flow state. It's all about connection, it's connecting with your board, it's connecting with your body, connecting with the wave. So if you can tap into that and you can get into that flow state, like there's no better place to be to perform. You have to trust that you are prepared. That's why you train. A lot of people think that you don't have to train for surf. So I think that the first step for someone that really wants to improve their surfing is understand how to train.
All right. What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Basis Surf Podcast. Very excited today because I got Marcelo Castellanos. He's an Olympic coach. He was coaching Bryan Perez at the Olympics in Teahupo'o. He has a very unique approach to surf coaching. He's also the head coach and founder at Puro Surf down in El Salvador. Goofy footer with a vicious backhand attack in the land of rights. Actually, I'm curious about that. Growing up all rights, but you're going left all the time or going backside all the time. But we got a ton of stuff we want to get through. But I thought I'd just start with what was it like coaching Bryan at Teahupo'o? Like, what kind of things were you guys doing to prepare, and what was it like actually being at the event at such an insane wave? Why don't we start with what were you guys doing to prepare getting into it?
All right, so I had the opportunity to work with Bryan for a long time. So we've been working on a lot of stuff, like starting from the foundations, all the way to get to the Olympics. So we had a lot of time to work on a lot of stuff. I like to do a holistic approach. So every time that we train, we always try to take into consideration 4 pillars. And those are like the physical, your body, which is you have to prepare your body to be able to perform, right? Then the other one is the technique. So you have to develop the technique to do different things. In the case of going to Teahupo'o is getting barrel, right?
Yeah.
And then we have the tactical approach. So that's how you connect with the ocean, how you get the most of your sessions or your competitions. And the other one is the mental part. So we've been working all that with Bryan for a long time. And at the beginning, I was doing basically everything. I was covering all the pillars. And then with time, like we start like to growing the team. And we create like a really good team with a really good psychology, like a guy that is preparing Bryan on the body, and I'm like leading the whole team, So we've been working on a lot of things for a long time, and to go to the Olympics, it was a big goal and a big thing. So you want to go there and be ready, and there's a few things that you want to be ready if you go to Teahupo'o, and it's you have to commit, and you have to do a good wave selection, and then you have to get barrel. So to do that, we have to find what was the best boards to do that, and we went to Teahupo'o to train a couple times. And we contacted Eva from Teahupo'o. He's like one of the main locals there, and he knows a lot. So as always, as I was mentioning, like I work with a team. Like I told him to be part of this team and everything. So we went there to work on understanding the wave, how it works, the direction, the different direction when it's west, and all that. So that was like a huge thing to go there and prepare on the actual venue, and then specifically once we were at the Olympics, what I want to do as a coach is just to help Bryan to connect with his instinct. It was more about that. It was helping Bryan or encouraging him to trust his instinct, and the instinct trust him, and to the instinct to trust him, we did all the previous work, and it's when you do all the preparation, the how you eat, the training outside of the water, the apnea, the paddling training that we did, because we did a lot of paddling training for that. So that's the main goal at that moment, is to help Bryan to connect with that and just to follow his instinct and not giving him like a specific thing or you're going to do this or you're going to do that. It's more like go in the water. You know what to do. You know what's your goal. We already know what's the best wave today and what we're looking for. And now it's just a matter of be you, connect with the moment, activate your senses so you can feel everything, all the noise around you, and then you can respond to that noise with the tools that you already have. And so you don't have to think, you just have to respond to the thing. So I think like making it like in a short version, that's what we did. And I think that's the way that goes when you get to the highest level. Is the people already know, the people are prepared. They just have to trust themselves and connect with the environment and themselves, you know.
Oh, that's very interesting. There's so many things that I'm going to dig into there because you dropped so many interesting points. But let's just dwell on kind of the mental approach you took there, right? I think it's really interesting. I would imagine, you're going to surf this new wave. You're, figuring out the lineups, like you mentioned. You're working with David Tarava to help you do that. But it seems like it was very intentional that you didn't want him thinking too much during the heats. I mean, is there a big danger of, an athlete becoming just over analyzing everything and then they start second guessing themselves or do you just want them to enter into this flow state? Is that it? Or were there any other reasons? Like what, tell me more a little bit about that mental approach.
I think that what you want and the way you're gonna perform the best is when you enter to that flow state, and that flow state it's all about connection, it's connecting with your board, it's connecting with your body, connecting with the wave and the forces and the energy of the wave, connecting with the noise and everything that is happening around, so if you can tap into that and you can get into that flow state, like there's no better place to be to perform, so I think that's the main goal and that's the mentality is to learn or try to connect and enter in that state, that's the whole thing. And we work with a psychologist that helps a lot, and to tap into that and to get into this flow state, you have to trust, and to trust is not about positive words and positive things. It's about training and knowing that you are prepared, So when the wave comes, there's a conversation that happens in between your brain, your body, and everything. And it's like your brain is going to ask, okay, are we ready to go on this one? And then your body and everything is going to ask yes or no. If you're ready and it's yes, everything's going to flow, you're going to go and everything's going to happen. If the answer is no, then is when you're going to doubt, you're going to freak out, and then the bad things happen, So that's what you want, is to enter into that state, flow state. And that's a tricky part, I think. And that's what you have to, that's why you train a lot of things before a contest. And that's why you work on different pillars, because you're working on all the details. So when you are in front of that wave and you ask that question, you're like, yes, I'm ready. Let's go.
Hey everyone, my name is Van and I'm an everyday surfer that's just obsessed with improving, and I wanted to take everything that I've learned, everything that I've struggled with, all the mistakes that I've learned along the way, and share it with you to help you become the best surfer that you can be. And I'm super lucky on this podcast, I get to interview the world's top pros, shapers, coaches, and take you along on my journey as I try to learn, uncover all the gold so you can apply to your own surfing. So hopefully you're going to get some value out of this. And the best way you can support me is just simply by sharing this podcast with whoever else you think may benefit from it. I also have been working really hard for a long time on something that I think is going to help a ton of people. I know that it was a game changer for myself as well. But more to come on that over the next coming months. I'm super excited. Thank you for all the support. And for those of you just joining for the first time, welcome to the Basis community. Super stoked to have you. Yeah, I really like that approach. Just being so prepared and putting all the effort in so that when you show up, there's no question in your mind, okay, I did everything that I needed to do. And, you kind of leave it up to the universe or whatever, but at least I did everything in my power to make it happen. And maybe it goes, maybe it doesn't. I think that that's a very smart approach. You know, I totally agree with you that, you know, just doing words of affirmation and things like that, they can help maybe a little bit on the margin, but it really doing the work is really what's going to give you that confidence. Like you get so many reps and you're like, I know I got this. Huh, that's interesting. So, you know, what's interesting to me though is, you know, you're in El Salvador, which is a bunch of rights. So are you going just, you know, matadero? Or are you going just like all the lefts, you know, all the beach break lefts? Is that where he's training? Or are you guys going to like probably Nicaragua? Or, you know, how do you guys prepare for backhand barrel riding, you know, in the land of rights?
We went to Teahupo 3 times,
Oh, okay.
and that was a good way to train. But while we were here in El Salvador, we were surfing a lot. The Matadero, you mentioned that. It's a nice wave here at Del Sonte. It's a left, and it gets hollow, like super hollow. Of course, nothing like Teahupo, but it's a pretty hollow wave. And then we were just looking for beach breaks, and doesn't matter what's the size. Normally here, when the waves are too big, you go to the point breaks, right? But the beach break still is good. So we were just trying to find barrels, you know, that we were on a mission and finding barrels, and that was it was all about barrels.
Yeah. Huh. Was it tough? I mean, because that's such like a big jump, right? Going from surfing like beach break backhand barrels to surfing a heavy, super shallow, one of the gnarliest lefts in the world. Like, you know, you mentioned that mental, you know, all the physical training you're doing, all the technique training that you're doing, but still, that's such a huge leap to going from, you know, to surfing, you know, Teahupo'o. It's like that's just a huge leap. I mean, I get the impression. I mean, I've met Bryan. I know Bryan. Like, he's not somebody that gets scared easily. But was there any sticking point mentally for him to get used to surfing super heavy barreling reef breaks like that, or was it relatively straightforward transition for him?
Uh, he surfed many waves, like Puerto Escondido. He surfed pipe. He surfed different waves, and going to Teahupo, I remember the first time he went, I didn't go that time. He was like, "Wow, this wave is crazy, it's gnarly," and he was like you can see that he was impressed with the power of the wave and everything. Second time I went with him, and he knew what to expect, and I think that he prepared mentally, and he digest all the information that he got from that first time. And the second time he was just going for it, you know, he was feeling comfortable, and his attitude was like, I wanted to get the waves get big. I want to surf big waves. He was like craving like surfing big waves, you know, and he got big
Yeah.
when we were there, and he was just going for it. He was like craving that just to be ready for whatever conditions happens on the Olympics, you know. So I think he adjusts like his mindset to get in that position of, I want more. I really want to get barrel, you know. So that was really cool to see, because he wasn't like, oh, I don't know, you know, like scared or anything. Or if he was scared, he was like pushing that fear with feeling excited about getting a big barrel, you know, and he was just excited
Yeah.
about getting barrel.
I remember seeing one of the waves he caught. I mean, that thing was, you know, there's some proper waves. Like he got, you know, during the beginning of or middle of the event, he got pretty proper. It was a little disappointing that towards the end in the finals, like it got smaller, but it was pretty sick to see. One of the things that you mentioned that I thought was interesting is that you emphasized paddle training for him. Could you talk more about that?
Yeah, like as I mentioned, like depends on what is gonna happen or where the country is gonna be. We work on different things. Like for example, here when the World Games was at Sunsal, we work a lot on paddling and to be ready to paddle a lot, you know, and catch a wave and paddle full speed. And I knew that that was going to give him confidence, you know. So it's kind of like the same scenario in Teahupo is you wanted to know that you have the power to just see the wave and be like, okay, I'm going, turn around and paddle with power to get into the wave, So we work that here in the pool, in the ocean, just turning around and like pushing the gas so you can get in the wave, really fast. And of course, we work on some details. I can't remember the name of the guy, but we talked to a guy, and he's like a specific paddling trainer, and he gave us some tips and some good stuff about biomechanics that was very helpful. So yeah, we were like paying attention to that because that was a big part of surfing there, is knowing that you can have the power to get in the wave, when you have to.
Yeah, for sure. It was interesting. I mean, I interviewed Zeke Lau, and he was talking about how he used to do a ton of paddle training because he just wanted it. So when he was at the heats, if they had a paddle battle, he would be the first one out, and he'd just always have that extra in reserve so that, when that wave of the day comes, there's no doubt he's going for it and he's going to get it. So that's pretty cool to hear that, Bryan, you guys were focusing on that as well. Now, on the technique side of things, it's interesting because, I mean, Bryan is such an advanced surfer, but you did mention that you've been coaching him for a really long time. So I actually do want to kind of dig into like what it was like coaching him earlier and like what kind of kinks in his technique and how you address them. But like for Chiopu, were there any specific technique things that you were focusing on, or was it more just like picking the right line, picking the right wave and all that?
We were working on picking the right line, understanding the wave so you can pick the right line, depends on the direction of the wave. And another thing, the specific thing that we were working on, it was like we call it the super pump, and it's like that pump that you do without hands, like to get comfortable doing that pump, because in Chopu, I think that for backside surfers, you kind of need, sometimes you cannot just grab the rail and hold, you have to make a big pump to make the wave, so we work on that mega pump, and we work on that here in small waves. You don't need a big wave to practice that mega pump. So we were working on technically like those two things.
Oh, interesting. Could you tell us a little bit more about this mega pump? This is the first time I
It's
know what you're talking about, but it's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just basically like you just catch the wave and you do like a bottom turn and you extend your whole body, and you throw your hands like trying to point with your chest where you want to go. So up in the wave, and then you just go down. But it's that action of extending your body, extending your arms, pointing with your chest where you want to go, so you can really get up in the wave, and then you have the energy of the wave to go down and make the barrel.
Yeah, interesting. So, going a little bit further back into, when you were coaching him, I mean, he's always been an incredible surfer, but like you've probably known him forever, and when he was coming up and when you first started coaching him, what kind of things were you guys working on? Were there any specific, like, I mean, his technique is so perfect, but like, were there any, kinks in his technique, little things issues that you worked on in fine tuning, or, what did you guys work on?
We work the same way, the holistic approach that I was telling you about, but I'm gonna talk about the technical pillar, and I really like to work on the foundations, on the fundamentals of things, and I developed this tool. I call it the 3 circles of power, and it's basically a system where you learn how to flow, and because we were talking about the flow is when you feel the connection of the board, the wave, and your body going where you want to go. That's kind of like when you get in that state of flow. So this system that I developed is 4 basic movements, which are what's a good posture. So a posture that gives you stability, and understand what's that posture that gives you stability. Because you ask a lot of people, even like really good surfers, say, hey, what's the posture? And they don't really know, what's the posture. And if you ask like a fighter, like what's the posture when you're ready to fight, they're going to show you what's the posture, So that's one thing, is know what's a good posture. Then another thing is learn how to turn left and right. So basically, when you're surfing, you just like painting on the face of the wave. So you have to get really good at going left and right. So we learn like the fundamentals of going left and right by doing rotation. And if you want, we can get into the details later. But just so I don't extend too much, that's another thing about the 4 basic movements. Then the other one is to learn how to compress your body, and then of course extend your body. That was a big one with Bryan because he's a tall kid, and when he was growing, he was just getting taller and taller and taller. So it wasn't easy for him to compress the body. So that was a big one. And then the other one is the hold positions. So sometimes you don't need to do much. You just need to hold. Like, for example, to do a cutback, once you have a posture, you have your compression, you are on your rail by doing the rotation, then you just have to hold the position. And that's sometimes the mistake, like a common mistake that people do is that they don't hold the position, they extend, so they cut the turn or they waste energy, you know, and they're not using like the external and internal force properly. So that's the fourth movement. Then the other circle, I have it here. Then the other circle, this one is the position of your foot on the board, you know, and the first thing you want to do to be able to go where you want to go is you have to connect with the board. And I think that's a big also common mistake that people have, is that people doesn't know how to connect with the board. So first you have to connect with the board, and you have to understand the concept of connecting with your board. So there's 3 spots where you can put your front foot, your back foot. Closer to the tail, you're going to be able to move more, but you also have less speed, less stability. Sometimes that's what you want. Then position number 2, you're a little bit forward and you have more speed and more stability. And then if you go even more forward, you have even more speed and more stability. So the 3 scenarios are good. You just have to be aware of what you want to do on the wave and move, you know, and move your foot, you know, depends on what you want to do. If you want to get better, you want to go forward. If you want to do a nice turn, you're going to go back. So creating awareness on that and connecting with the board was another huge thing. And the other circle is the dynamic of the wave. So kind of like understand how the wave works and what's the lines and what's the purpose of surfing, you know. And I see it as a game, you know, and there's a pocket, and what you want is to go far from the pocket and then go back to the pocket, touch the pocket, or you can start to get creative and like hit the pocket coming from behind, you know, and you can get creative, but you know that the goal is to hit that 100 points, you know, which is the most critical part of the wave. So just by like opening and creating awareness on that, and like finding a different approach to the lines, I think it's something very powerful, you know, because you can say, okay, let's do a reentry. Okay, that's how you call this line, you know. Okay, that's a reentry. Okay, let's do a cutback, but it's just a line, you know. So if you learn how to make lines on the face of the wave and you get really good at connecting with your board, knowing with your body what to do to keep your stability, speed, and know how to go left and right, like that's when you combine these three circles and you get to the flow state, you know, or at least you get closer, because if you're not connecting with your board, you're not gonna get to the flow state. So those are the things that I like work with Bryan back in the days. And of course, there's a lot of other things that we work on, a technique specifically, but we're being always using this 3 circle system the entire time, because most of the times the problem is there, you know, it's in something very basic, you know, and working with other athletes like high level and everything, most of the times I find that the things to fix on these simple like things that I just explained about the 3 circles of power.
Really interesting. I mean, I love the way you have this very clear framework and you break it down, and it makes a lot of sense, right? It's very comprehensive. And then I guess the whole thing, though, is obviously as you go deeper into any one of these circles, it gets a lot, more intricate and more detailed, but it all comes back to these foundations. It's interesting. I interviewed this surfer, Isaac Stanton. He was pro and competes. He's from Hawaii, and he just says, yeah, surfing is all advanced fundamentals. Like, if you got to have the fundamentals, but it really is just building on those fundamentals. So one of the things that you mentioned that I thought was interesting, you mentioned it briefly, but I'm just curious. You mentioned this external versus internal power or force. Are you talking about the internal power generated by you as a surfer versus the external power or energy of the wave, or were you talking about something else there?
Okay, so this is something really, really cool, I think, and important to be aware, is that there's two forces that are happening every time that you surf, and it's the internal force and the external force. The external force is the wave, so when you're going down the wave, you're using external force. As soon as you hit the flat, there's no more force, And then the internal force is the energy that we create with our body, with our movements. Like, just to give you an example, is when you extend your body, you're creating internal force because you're pushing against the water, and that same amount of push back, and then you project that energy, So understanding these two energies, it helps people to use it better. And to give you an example, if you catch, let's say you're gonna do a turn and you wanna do a bottom turn. So if you catch the wave, you're gonna start going down. So you're using the external force. You're going down. Then you're gonna start going up. As soon as you start going up, that's when you're gonna start losing your external force. But there's still external force. So you have to use it all the way. And then when you don't have more external force, that's when you add the internal force. If you add the internal force too early and you still have external force, you're wasting a little bit of energy. So that's the little energy that you're wasting. That's what you're missing to get to the top of the wave, to get to a lip, to get and hit the lip with a lot of power. You're missing that because you're extending too early, let's say.
Yeah.
So once you understand both, you use the hold of the first circle, the whole thing. That's going to be huge to be able to manage, and use external force and internal force, and always be efficient and maintain your speed the whole time without wasting energy.
Yeah, that's a very elegant way of putting it. And I was about to say, it seems like probably a common problem would be when the internal force and the external force are not matching each other, right? You're applying the internal force when you shouldn't, or you're not applying the internal force when you need it because there's no external force, and just the mistiming of like when you apply your energy and where you're doing on the wave would be so important. Yeah. So then when it comes to that, I mean, so you mentioned like with the bottom turn, for example, trying to get up into the lip, it sounds like you're saying that most people's problem is they start pushing too soon. Like they're trying to apply too much internal force and too much energy in the beginning. And then the ramification of that, or the problem there, would be then you end up like stalling the board. You're pushing too hard on the tail or something, and that slows the board down. And then you don't have the energy to release it back into the lip. Am I hearing you right?
Yeah, that can happen if you push too much. Then the fins can go out or something like that. But mostly is like, if let's say that when you're doing a turn, there's different stages to do that turn. So the first, you get into that posture, then you're gonna get on your rail. So getting on that rail and holding the position, that's called a bottom turn. So you hold that position. And then there's a moment where you do something that it's called the projection. So that's when the bottom turn is over, and now you're going into the turn. Okay? So when I say that people's not holding or they wasting the external force, is that they are doing the projection too early. If you do a projection too early, it's not that you're gonna add more speed and that's going to make you drag or slow down, is that you're going to waste that external force. It's not that you're going to add a lot of more energy into a turn. It's just that you're just going to waste that energy that you could use and then you add. It's not that you do this plus this, so then I'm going to have that energy on top of the wave. No, if you do it too early, you're just wasting the energy. So knowing when to do the projection, which is when you extend your body and you generate the internal force, that's what you have to understand.
Yeah. And so then how would you, so that's your bottom turn. And then let's say you're doing a front side carve, right? You come out of your bottom turn, you're going into that section of the wave. So is it the same thing, or, in terms of the external versus the internal? Because now you're at the top of the wave and you're just getting into that compressed position, you're holding the rail, and then you're using gravity to bring you down and you push at the end, or how would you think about that?
When you do that is the same thing, but you start all over again.
Yeah.
It's like now you're on top of the wave and now external force is open again. So you have external force to go down and then you repeat the same cycle. And that's when you get on a good rhythm on a wave. And that's something that another thing that I create, another concept is called the infinite circle concept. And it's when you learn how to use the energy. So you start with good posture, do a nice bottom turn, do a nice projection, do a nice turn, finish with good posture. So then you're ready to start all over again, and you do it again and again and again. And I think that's the difference between the really good surfers and others that are not that good, is that the good surfers are always closing the circle and starting all over again. So that's what happens if you go to the top. Then you're on the top, you use the external force, you go down, you do the same thing, and you always keeping your speed and
Right. Well, so this brings up a question, because your approach to it is very interesting. And I've talked to so many different surfers and coaches at this point, and you hear actually very different things. So, for example, I was talking to Anton, who he lives in El Zonte as well, right? And he's like, yeah, when you do when you're doing your top turn, you're just going to push as hard as possible in your top turn, right? And then, I was talking to Zeke Lau, and he was like, oh yeah, I'm just going to get all the way on my back foot and push as hard as possible. But it seems like what you're saying there is more aligned with Parker Coffin, who talks about how the wave has all the energy. You just got to put yourself in the right position, and you actually don't have to push as hard as you think. So where do you, how do you think about that? How hard should you be pushing, at the top of the wave or whatnot?
I think that sometimes you don't have to push hard, but sometimes you can push really hard. No, I'm not against pushing. Actually, there's a moment, depends on what you want to do.
Right.
What you have to make sure, if you want to push, is that you get on your rail. If you are on your rail, you can push and generate a lot of speed, but at the same time, when you put pressure on the tail, you're slowing down, So when you do a turn, it's a moment where you're exploding all the energy you have by doing a drag,
Mm-hmm.
So then you have to kind of start all over again. And because you do that mostly at the top of the wave, then you have the energy of the wave to regain and then do it again. But I'm completely agree, when you get on your rail, sometimes what you want is to push really hard, and that's another tricky thing, is to know how much to push and how much energy put into the turn and all that. But no, it depends, some waves you just go with the flow and you just hold the rail and you have enough speed that you don't need to add any speed, and sometimes you can add speed, you can push. So it's not a rule that has to be this way. Yeah. It's open. It depends on the situation, depends on the section that you are, and depends on what's the next thing you want to do. Sometimes you don't want to push too hard because you're going to miss the next section. Right. Or sometimes that's the only section, so you want to push really hard and you want to finish the turn right there,
Yeah. Let me ask another point that comes up in different people have different approaches. What is your view on, weight distribution when you're doing your turn, front foot versus back foot? How do you think about the weight distribution?
Nice. Yeah, that's a tricky one. You know that with time, I've been like trying to open my mind and see things as concepts, so you don't have to tell people what to do, or what's the good way to do it. Is you give the concept to people and they can decide what to do, you know so on that specific thing is, let's start by knowing that the board is designed to get speed, or the most of speed, when you put your weight on your front foot and you put your weight on the thickest and the widest part of the board. That's when the board is going to start getting a lot of speed, right? Uh, so when you're doing a turn, you want to go really fast. And what naturally is going to happen is that your weight is going to transfer to your back foot. Like if you're driving a really fast car, you push the gas, you go back, so automatically your back foot, or the weight is gonna go to your back foot. So you're gonna slow down, right? But that slow down is the amount of water that you're gonna throw, the spray that you're gonna throw. So sometimes that's what you want. You wanna throw a big spray. You have to put some weight on the tail, but at the end of the day, I think personally that I like to think more about putting my weight on my front foot to go really fast and naturally let the the energy move my back foot, like my body back,
Hmm.
so I don't have to think about two things, okay, weight on my front foot to get speed, and then I'm gonna push on my back foot, so that's kind of like naturally happens, but the same, like it depends on what you want to do. If you want to make a section and there's another turn and you don't want to slow down, you probably don't want to push too hard on the tail. If what you want is to throw a lot of water, you probably want to put some weight on the back foot, But for me, it's better to think about speed the whole time. Like let's go fast, 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 and to go fast, the rule of the board is put weight on the front foot. I go fast, put weight on my back foot. I slow down.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. I was the way you approach it. I was interviewing Philippe Malbeau, and he's coach and Hurley team manager, and he asked Philippe Toledo. He's like, "What is your intention when you surf a wave? What goes on in your mind?" And Philippe was just like, "I just want to go fast. I just want to go as fast as possible. That's the only thing going on in his brain, And it sounds like that's what you like to do as well, huh?
Yeah.
Nice. So obviously, and what I think you're talking about it is very interesting. I think it's very easy when it comes to surfing to think just black and white. Oh, it's all front foot, it's all back foot, and then people just get stuck. Okay, only front foot, only back foot. In reality, like internal versus external. Like the reality of surfing is it's a continuum, and you're trying to figure out where you want to be on that balance between speed and control. So the way you're breaking it down, I think, is going to make sense to a lot of people. Now, you're talking about a lot of these concepts, which are very helpful. And we were talking earlier, and you're talking about the difference between training and the difference between training and surfing and free surfing. Could you talk more about that?
Yeah, so I think that one of the biggest problems, let's say, of people wanting to improve and not being able to do it back in the days when I was growing up was a lot like there was no information, no coaches, no information, internet like wasn't like still what it is right now. So that was a big thing. Right now, there's a lot of information. There's a lot of tips. Like what you're doing is great. Like bringing tips from different people, so the information is there. The thing is that people at these days still don't know how to train, and surfing is a sport that gives you a lot of freedom. Like there's still like a lot of like still like people think that you don't have to train for surfing. It's more like a natural thing, so it's a lot like that. But the reality is that if you look at other sports like jiu-jitsu, for example, you go to train, you go and you go to learn stuff, so you go to the class and you work on specific things, and uh, and then you can just go and roll and have fun, you know. But there's this moment of specific things that you're working on. So I think the biggest difference in surfing is there's free surfing, and that's when you go and there's no goal. Like, it's just do whatever you want, enjoy, have fun. Training session, there is a specific goal. And I think that's the biggest difference is when you go out free surfing, no goal. When you are training, there is a specific goal. And when you have a specific goal, you have to go in the water and you have to work on that specific goal. And that's the other thing that I see in surfers, like even like really good surfers, is like, okay, this is the goal, this is the task for the session. They go out, they forget about the task, they forget about the goal, and they just free surfing, you know, because they don't want to miss the wave, because they're not used to it, to be like, okay, I'm going to work on this, you know. So I think that the first step for someone that really wants to improve their surfing is to understand the difference and understand how to train, how to go out and have a training session. And I don't mean that you have to always go out and do a training session. You can decide, I'm going to train 3 days a week. I'm going to train 30 minutes of each session. And then the next 2 hours, I'm just going to have fun, you know, but you are working on a specific goal and you're working towards that. And the best way is to work one thing at a time. And when you're doing that, you're going to miss waves. You're going to wipe out. You're going to feel that you're going backwards instead of like improving. But that's the process, you know, and that's when you are really going to start like seeing the improvements and all that. And to do a nice training session, you have to learn how to pick what's the right goal based on your level, you know, and then know how to transfer that goal into the reality, that which is like incorporate that into your tools, and then you just apply it when you're surfing.
Yeah. I think the picking of what is the right goal for where you are is the hard part for a lot of people, right? And that's where you get a coach, because a lot of times you don't know what you don't know, and you're working on one thing when you should really be working on another thing. And I would imagine that's where a lot of people are going to struggle with it.
Yes.
Now, when it comes to training, I mean, so obviously there's training in the water. You talk about training sessions. Is there anything that you recommend surfers do to train on land? You know, let's say they're getting ready to go down to Puro Surf, and, you know, what should they do to prepare? Or are they drills that you give them, things that they can train or practice on?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that you can train outside of the water. I think that you can develop, like as I was mentioning at the beginning, on the holistic approach. If you're working on your body, you can simulate things outside of the water just to develop the muscles involved. Not even to maybe transfer that into the ocean or when you're surfing, but just to develop the muscles involved. It's very helpful, you know. But you can do stuff on the skateboard, you know, the surf skate. And I know that a lot of people is against that, and like there's a lot of funny things about that. But it's a great way, and it's a great way to simulate not surfing, but simulate how you use the rails, you know. So it's a big difference, you know. I'm not gonna simulate surfing. I'm just gonna simulate how I push the rails, so I can work on understanding how my body position and how I'm gonna move my body to be able to push the rail and keep my stability. You know, so you're working on a very specific thing that is not necessarily gonna transfer into I'm working because this is gonna make me a great surfer. Then you have to transfer that into the wave and the timing of the wave and the other components, you know. But you can do stuff to like gain some stuff, you know, in different ways, you know. And surfing, it's a sport that I was doing like a study, you know, that for every hour that you're in the water, you're probably surfing for 20-30 seconds, you know. So you need a lot of hours to be able to surf for 20 hours. Let's say you need like 1,200 hours in the water to reach the 20 hours, you know, which is like a number where you start feeling comfortable doing something new, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
there's things you can do outside of the water to gain some time, you know. And
Yeah.
at the end of the day, what you want is to do what you can outside of the water, but then go in the water and spend time in the water, setting specific goals, and then do like just surfing and
Yeah.
working on the stuff, you know.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's interesting with the surf skate stuff. And, you know, I've talked to a lot of coaches, and pretty much all the coaches are like, it is a valuable training tool if you're doing it right and you're learning the proper technique to do it right. And I know at Puro Surf, you guys have a pretty sweet, like, set up like skate park with the right curves and everything for practicing it, right? And you guys don't you guys do like camps, and so you'll actually teach people how to do the surf skates and whatnot?
Yeah, no, we use it a lot. Like, and personally, like, I had to move to Argentina for 3 years when I studied, and I was skating mostly, like surf skating, because in my mind I was just surfing, you know.
Uh,
And actually, like, every time that I got back to El Salvador, I was surfing better, you
really?
know. So I know that it's something very powerful, and it's something that can really help or damage if you're doing it wrong, you know. And which is like most of the cases I see people doing surf skating the wrong way, you know. And if you've transferred what you're doing into the wave, it's not gonna look good. Maybe it's not gonna work, you know.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting. I think I was watching one of your guys' videos at Puro Surf, and you guys were practicing on the surf skate, and the technique looked a little bit different from surfing. You know, like the way you would reach the backhand all the way forward, like almost over the front foot. It almost felt like it was almost exaggerated. Is that because most people have the problem where they're not facing forward enough, you know, and you're trying to overcompensate and you're trying to train them? Could you talk a little bit about that?
uh, okay, so what you saw, like, about reaching your with your front hand, there's many reasons, but let's start with the posture, you know. And basically what you want to have a good posture, or a posture that gives you stability and opens the opportunities to do the next thing, which is rotate and switch rails, is you want to point with your chest forward on the same direction of your board, and your hips and chest and everything forward. So if you reach with your hand, that's going to help you to point even more forward. If you reach with your hand, that also helps you to put weight on your front foot. The more your hand goes back, the more weight you're going to transfer into your back foot. So you want to keep it forward to keep your weight on your front foot. You know, so that's the idea of keeping the hand forward and trying to reach with your hand. And then if you look at any video, you're going to see the pro surfers, when they're doing the bottom turn, they're reaching with the front hand. You know, so if you surf the whole time reaching with your front hand, that might look a little bit weird. But as soon as you want to do something like the bottom turn, you'll see that everybody's reaching with the front hand, with that hand, you know. So they can, like, dig into the, like, kind of put the hand and the elbow and the forearm on the water, you know, and they keeping the scapula locked so the chest is going on the same direction of the nose. And then you do the projection. And part of the projection is that you, with that hand that is pushing forward, then you move backwards, like you grabbing the water and you pushing yourself forward. So the more forward it is, the more internal energy you're gonna create, you know. So it's a way of kind of exaggerate the movement and understand that that's the exaggerated way to do it, like reaching, like. But then from there you decide you can reach this amount or less or nothing, and you decide. But you can have access to do it like full reach when you want to do like a super deep bottom turn, you know, and you want to generate a lot of speed and you want to keep your weight on your front foot to keep your speed, and then do the projection to generate more speed. If you want, you can access to that. You know what's the way to do it, like at the max. But then
Right.
from there, you decide, you know, if you reach, you don't reach. but you understand the concept of doing that, you know. And that's probably that's what you see on the videos, is like people is doing that and exaggerating or doing it 100%. You know,
Yeah.
if you exaggerate that on the right wave, on the right moment, it doesn't look like you're exaggerating. It looks like that's what you need to do in order to serve that section. You know.
Right. Got it. All right. I got a couple more questions for you, but first we're going to ask you some questions from the community members. So question, how come you're not in the Olympics? That was from Anton.
That's an easy one, bro. I'm not on that level.
When you were there, did you get a chance to surf Chopu at all? Or did you, is it just all Bryan? You can't really get in the water.
You know what? Like first time I went, I surfed like every time with Bryan, and I like surf a lot, you know, and that was amazing. Then when I went to the Olympics, I didn't even like brought a board. Like I didn't want to have that in my mind, because one thing is having your mind that you're gonna surf, you know, lowers 4 foot or something, and another one is like, oh, it's huge, you know. And then if I'm the one that I'm gonna serve, I might be a little bit scary, you know, and thinking about, you know, I didn't want to have that in mind, you know. Like it's like I'm here to do coaching. It's all about Bryan. It's all about like him performing. So I was just focused on that, you know.
Got it. All right. Second question. What was your path to becoming a coach?
Well, I started surfing when I was 5 years old. My dad is a surfer. I've been surfing my whole life, and I think I experienced surfing in different ways. First, just as a kid, having fun in the ocean, then competing and trying to be a professional surfer, and like trying to get sponsors and all that, and trying to get good at surfing. So I think that's when like the obsession starts. It was like, I want to get good at surfing, you know, I need information. So I start to figure out and try to find information from all the sources I can. And I think that was like the base of starting to want to be a coach. And then I think that I like to share the good news, you know. And I started Christian Surfers here a long time ago when I was like 15, 16 years old, and I was always sharing the good news, you know, like and trying to share with the surfers like good stuff, you know, about God and all that. And I think that that was like my mission here on earth. So I was doing that through Christian surfers, but then I felt like my real mission is to share the good news of how to get better at surfing. You know?
That is the best news. We all need it.
You know, and because I don't know, surfing gave me so much, you know, and it helped me and personally to be a better person and all that, you know, that I wanted to share that with other people, you know, and not just surfing, but give them some tools to get better, you know, because that's the best feeling, you know, when you have tools to go out and you just have fun. The more tools you have, the more fun you have, you know. So I felt that was my call, is to share the good news about surfing and life also, you know, like surfing at the end of the day, it's amazing, but life is where we are right now, and we have to learn how to surf life, you know, not just waves. So I kind of like that's my mission, you know, in life, and that's how I got here, you know, and that's why I do what I do.
That's great. Okay. What is your intention when you surf? You know, I mentioned earlier, like Felipe Toledo, he just wants to go fast. And do you have any specific intention when you stand up on a board?
I think that it depends on what I'm doing, but most of the times what I want is to connect. That's what I'm always looking for, to connect and to have fun, you know. So by that intention, like looking to that, I find that I can have fun in all types of conditions, So when the waves are really bad, my goal is to go and connect and try to make the most of what I have. If the waves are good and there's barrels, maybe I want to get barrel, But always trying to connect with the ocean and finding the right expectation, I think is kind of like my goal every time that I go surf. It's like, okay, this is my expectations of today, or today there's no expectations. I'm just gonna do this, So connecting everything, connecting.
Awesome. Awesome. I love it. If you had to surf the same wave for the rest of your life, what wave would you surf? You don't have to name a name, but what would it be like?
Ooh, maybe a right point break with some barrel sections and then sections to rip. You know the name of that wave. Yeah, something like Punta Roca.
Yeah. Yeah.
I grew up in El Salvador, paradise of right point breaks. So I love surfing backside. Of course I love going frontside, and I'm always looking for left, but I love surfing backside. Like that's so good.
Interesting. Interesting. You love surfing backside. You know what? I never understood in El Salvador, it's all right hand points, but like so many of your good surfers are goofy. I was like, why is that? It's so
Yeah.
crazy. I don't get it.
I don't know. It's just backside is so good, bro.
Yeah, I guess
Going
so.
backside, it's amazing, and I
Yeah.
don't know why. Maybe there's more goofies, but here you don't have too many options. If you're
Yeah.
goofy, you go backside.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess that's it. Um, all right. So if, you're stranded on a desert island, what board would you surf? What board would you bring? Let's say it's,
Yeah.
like head high to double overhead, decent size waves, fun size waves. What would it be?
I think I will bring a regular shortboard, high performance, 5'11", 28 liters. I think that's what I. If the waves are good, if I have to choose one and the waves can change and all that,
Yeah.
I might
Waves are
get a
good.
yeah 5'11"
Okay.
and 28 liters
And
round pin
round pin. All right. Thruster or quad or twin. What would it be?
thruster.
Thruster.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. All right. Well, how should people find more about you and Puro Surf? I know Puro Surf, you guys have this amazing resort. You guys are in front of a beautiful wave. You guys do surf camps and whatnot. I mean, anything else you want to talk about, or how should people find you, Puro Surf, etc.?
Well, you can find me on Instagram, Marcelo C Surf. That's my Instagram. Then Puro Surf. We have a website, purosurf.com, and we have a really cool program here at Puro Surf. We have camps going every week, like from Monday to Saturday, and we have different levels. So we have a program that is specific for beginners, then another one that is specific for novice, another one specific for foundations, and then we have another one that is more for pros and all that. But that's a really cool program because we teach like the methodology that I create. It's called the surf sequence, and we learn all the things about the system that I was talking about of the 3 circles of power. But mostly like you gonna learn on how to train, how to go out and train by using my methodology. And you mentioned something about that the hardest part is to find what is the goal that you have to go and work on. So that's part of the things that what we do during the camp is we educate people, and we um, like help them understand where they are, what level they are, because I think that's a big thing in surfing. Like people doesn't really know what their level, and people think that are in a higher level than what they really are. So understanding that and setting the right expectations is gonna help you to understand what you have to work on in order to get where you wanna get, and where to start. So I think that that's a really cool program. I'm very proud of. I created to help people to understand more surfing and improve. So you can come and do that camp that I really really recommend. The waves here are really good. It's pretty consistent. We have all like different types of waves, And we have the facility here, Puro Surf, which is a performance academy with a pool, a video analysis room. We do the cold plunge and ice bath. We do breathing techniques. There's yoga, there's surf skate. There's a lot of activities that just adds into the experience, so you can learn different tools on how to you create your own like training program and to continue the journey, and having the tools to know how to keep improving, so I think that's something that I really recommend.
Okay, great. If I go to one of your camps, am I going to surf Chopu like Bryan?
I think we're gonna start setting the right expectations, and then we're gonna start working from there.
Damn
So
it.
at some point, you might be able to do it, but we have to work on a few
Ah.
things before we get there.
Man, I was kind of hoping it would just be like 1 week and I could surf, pumping chopes, but I
No,
guess
I
not.
think that that's something very important, and I don't know if we're running out of time, but
No.
in jiu-jitsu, something that I really like is that people understand how hard it is to go from white belt to blue belt, and from blue belt to purple, and like all the way to get it to black belt. In surfing, people is like they're not aware of that. It's like, oh, in how many days I'm gonna learn how to surf? It's a huge like journey, and surfing is one of the hardest sports, out there, and you have to understand that it's a journey, and it takes a lot of time, a lot of practice to go from beginner to novice, and then from novice to foundation, and then foundation to emerging, then emerging to pre-elite. It's a long journey. So like understanding that, I think it's part of the things that the people have to understand to set the right expectations so they can enjoy the journey, and realize that it's all about enjoying the journey, because it's a never ending learning thing. You always gonna keep learning. There's always gonna be something that you want to add to your repertoire, your tools and all that. And then you're gonna get to a point where you're not gonna keep improving because you're getting older or this, and then you get to a point where you start adapting, and that's the journey. Adapt your age, adapt your injuries, adapt this to, so you keep it fun the whole time, and you really enjoy the whole journey, because that's what it is. It's a beautiful journey, and there's no like destination. It's just a never ending journey, so better learn how to enjoy that journey.
Yeah. Well, thanks for crushing my dreams because all I want to do is surf like Bryan, but I guess I'll have to settle for being mediocre the rest of my life. But no, I'm kidding. It was a very much a pleasure to talk to you, Marcelo. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.